Real quick, I want to tell you about a free webinar I'm hosting on April 25th at 1 p.m. Eastern Time called Repurposing Content for Your Podcast. Depending on the guru of the day, you need a podcast, you need to be on TikTok, you need to be posting on LinkedIn, and don't forget your own blog and newsletter. And this can lead to burnout fast. But I'm here to tell you a better way. By repurposing content, there's a reason I'm able to publish 3 podcast episodes per week, 3 newsletters, and post on LinkedIn almost daily. So in this free 60-minute webinar, you will learn how to capture content ideas as easily as possible, how to build your own content flywheel from content you've already created, how to keep track of everything, and how to create a two-way street where you're repurposing for and from your podcast. Sign up for free today at profitablepodcaster.fm/repurpose. If you are struggling to create content, you need this webinar. Again, that URL is profitablepodcaster.fm/repurpose. Being a profitable podcaster is all about using your time wisely. And today, I'm going to tell you about my process that saves me a ton of time. And here's a little behind the scenes. I've had the flu for the last few days. I'm recovering. My kids were sick last week, and I had run out of batched content for this show. But I am able to record an episode because of the process I'm going to tell you today. Last week I talked about automation. Today I'm putting that automation into practice, as well as a little smart content repurposing. This is going to save you a ton of time. I'm really excited. And I'll tell you straight up that this content, you aren't only going to hear about this process on this podcast. If you follow me on LinkedIn, you've already seen it. If you follow me on Instagram, you'll see it there. If you're subscribed to my newsletter, which you should be, profitablepodcaster.fm, then you'll see it in your inbox as well. The process is easier than you'd think. And that's what we're going to talk about today on The Profitable Podcaster. Having a profitable podcast is like having any other profitable business. You need to make money, sure, but you also need to grow. You need to spend your time wisely, and you need predictability. A couple of sponsors won't make you a profitable podcaster, but having systems to stay consistent, create steady growth, and generate predictable income will. That's what you'll get with this show. Hi, I'm your host, Joe Casabona, and my podcasts have been profitable from day one. I'll share everything I know with you here on The Profitable Podcaster. All right, let's dive right into it. So let me tell you, if I wasn't clear from the cold open or from the title of this, I'm going to tell you how I repurpose my content in a way that makes that content a LinkedIn post, an Instagram post, a newsletter, and the outline and talking points for this very podcast. So I'll walk you through the whole process. I'll link some resources over in the show notes, the description for this show. And you can find everything at profitablepodcaster.fm as well. So the first thing I do is I put the text of whatever, like the idea, the content, I put the content into a Google Doc. That Google Doc goes into a very specific folder. It's called the social media content folder. My VA also has access to this, but one of the reasons I do that is because over in Make, formerly Integromat, I have an automation watching that folder. So when a new document is added, Make grabs the title of that document and puts it into Airtable. And Airtable is where my VA and I manage all of my social posts, as well as all the content for this. So Basically, I know which of the social posts have been published to social media, which ones I want to turn into episodes. And that all starts with a new document in a Google Drive folder. As an added bonus, I actually have a button on my Stream Deck. I have a blog post on this. I should probably, where's my pen and paper? I have a blog post on this where I'll show you the URL to open a new document in a specific folder. And I have a Stream Deck button that'll do that. So I don't even need to go to Google Drive and go to the right folder. I can just push a button on my Stream Deck and have a new document ready to go, which is super fun. So that's step one. Create a Google Doc in a specific folder that both my VA and I can access. And then that information is added to our project tracker in Airtable. She knows to take that document. So once I'm done writing it, I will mark that document as ready for publish, and there'll be a publish date and everything. She'll know to take that document and then use a Canva template I created to turn that text into a set of images for LinkedIn and for Instagram. Now, the Instagram part I'm experimenting with. I recently left Twitter, yada, yada. And so I set up a Instagram account just for the Profitable Podcaster, and that's where those posts are going. So engagement's kind of low right now, but I need to, there's a couple of things I'm experimenting with. I have found that the carousels on LinkedIn work extraordinarily well. They have done very well for me in gaining me new followers and things like that. So that part of the process seems rock solid for me. It might change in a couple of months, but right now it's great. So anyway, step one, create Google Doc. Step two, VA takes that Google Doc and turns it into a set of images for Instagram and LinkedIn. Now, I also have this text, right? And I use that text for the basis of these Profitable Podcaster episodes. So the Google Doc is basically my outline / script, right? Because this is not just bullet points. This is actual text. I want people to be able to read that text and get all of what I'm trying to say. The beauty of the podcast, right? And this is why people should do both, is I get to add context. On the LinkedIn post, for example, I don't talk about the automation that sends the Google Doc to the project tracker. That's something that I've included only on this show. Maybe that's a separate LinkedIn post later, but the context gets added here because I have more time, more space. One of the limitations of Instagram is that you can only upload 10 images to a single post. So I try to keep my carousels to 10 slides on LinkedIn so that we can one-for-one repurpose that content. But the Google Doc is basically my outline. I'll add more notes and context once I'm on the mic. Then I take that text. So I'm going to copy this text, and I'm going to make it two things: the body of the episode and the copy that I use in the next newsletter. So if you're signed up for the Profitable Podcaster newsletter, you know that you get tips. You'll get a long sequence of tips. You'll get updates on things I'm working on. And on Thursdays, you will get this information the same way it was written on LinkedIn, and then a link to this podcast if you want to listen for more context. So that's it. There you have it. That's the whole process. One Google Doc that serves as 4 platform optimized pieces of content. All right. And that's the important part, right? I'm not just reading the LinkedIn carousel verbatim for this show. I'm not taking a screenshot of the PDF or whatever for Instagram. I could probably do a little bit better there, but that Google Doc serves as the basis for those 4 pieces of content. And again, LinkedIn is really working well for me. Instagram is an experiment. This podcast is super important to me. And then the newsletter is also super important to me. And I want to deliver the content the way people like it. So if I have way more followers on LinkedIn than I have email subscribers. So if people are seeing that and then joining my mailing list, then they're getting more content. They're getting that message repeated to them, which is really important. I think something that a lot of content creators worry about is, am I saying the same thing too many times? And something that Dickie Bush has said is, you don't want to figure out how to say 1,000 things. You want to try to figure out how to say the same thing 1,000 times. I think that's really important, right? Because people need that repetition for it to stick. You hear something once, great. You hear something 5 times, better. You hear something 15 times, even better. Maybe it sticks then. So don't worry about repeating your message. Definitely repurpose your content, because people generally aren't consuming all of your content all of the time. Everything, everywhere, all at once. They are only subscribed to your podcast or only subscribed to your newsletter. And then it's up to you to surface that content and let them know, like, hey, you're subscribed to this newsletter. You should listen to the Profitable Podcaster podcast. Gives you even more context, right? Or, hey, listen to my show. It's really great. Or, hey, you're listening to this show. You'll love my newsletter. It's like even more tips, more than weekly. So check it out. So this gives people options, and you build your cross-platform followings that way. So just to recap before we end this short episode, I guess they're all short. It's a mini podcast. Number one is I create a Google Doc in a specific folder. The sub point that I don't make in the LinkedIn post is I have an automation that is watching that folder and adds the information to Airtable for me and my VA to process. My VA then takes that Google Doc and turns it into a carousel for LinkedIn, that's a PDF, and a set of images for Instagram using a Canva template. I take that text and I use it as the basis for an upcoming Profitable Podcaster episode. And I take that same text and I put it in the newsletter with a link to the latest Profitable Podcaster episode. This process has saved me a ton of time, because what I would do is, what am I going to post to social media today? Maybe I'll just post a link to my podcast, and they were different. What am I going to talk about in my newsletter today? I can't just talk about the same. I'll mention the episode, but I can't talk about the same thing. Poppycock. This process has been working for me. I don't feel overwhelmed. I feel like I have a good backstock of content. And again, I've been sick. I was worried I wasn't going to get this episode out. I was like, what am I going to talk about? Right. I have a bunch of LinkedIn posts because I'm posting to LinkedIn 2 to 3 times a week. And I publish this show once a week. So I have tons of things to talk about. So I went to Airtable. I looked at a post that I thought would be a really good episode. And I was like, all right, that's what I'm going to talk about this week. And now I have the next 3 that I'm going to work on right after this. So that's it. There you have it. Thanks for listening to the Profitable Podcaster. Check out all of the links and show notes. They will be in the description in your podcast app. You can sign up for the newsletter over at profitablepodcaster.fm. There will also be subscribe button. Just go to profitablepodcaster.fm. Everything you need will be there. And there's also a new feedback. I forgot about this. There's a new feedback page. So you can go to profitablepodcaster.fm/feedback, and you can write into the show questions, comments. You can tell me how wrong you think I am. And maybe I'll read it on the show. Now, before we wrap up here, this is another thing. I actually, I forgot to do this. Well, I guess I didn't forget to do this. I thought of this after I scheduled last week's episode for publish. But I want to do an episode idea of the week. And so if you are struggling to come up with content, I want to give you an idea that could work. And so I'm going to do this. This will be a segment at the end of every episode. It'll be in the newsletter too, but episode idea of the week. I feel like this week it's a gimme. Take a newsletter, Or if you don't have a newsletter, a blog post, a piece of content you've written, and repurpose it as a podcast episode. The beauty of this is that you get to update it, you get to ad-lib a little bit, but you have the frame, right? The skeleton of that episode already. So if it's a blog post, read it verbatim. Update it, and then you get the update juice from Google too. If it's a social media post, go through and do exactly what I just did in this episode. Add some more meat as it makes sense. But you have a bunch of content already. If that content aligns with the mission of your podcast, repurpose it. Even if you have an interview show. If you have an interview show, that doesn't mean that you're contractually obligated to only do interviews. So try out a solo show. Maybe you'll like it. Maybe your listeners will like it. All right, that's it for this episode of The Profitable Podcaster. Thanks so much for listening. Head on over to profitablepodcaster.fm for everything I just mentioned. And until next time, I can't wait to see what you make.